welcome to NAPOD, where we provide NA speaker meetings and workshops in a podcast. We are an ad-free podcast, and if you enjoy listening, please help us to be self-supporting by visiting napod.xyz, look for the donate link, and drop $1 or $2 in the virtual basket. If you're also in AA or have friends that are, please tell them about our other podcast, Sobercast. Sobercast features AA speakers and workshops in the same format as NAPOD. We upload a new speaker every day, and it's easy to subscribe by searching for Sobercast, that's 2 words, on any podcast player app, or go to Sobercast.com. Enjoy the podcast, and thanks for listening.
I stand because one of my sponsors said, when you talk, you start off strong, but then you get weak. So if you stand, you're more likely to project better. I want to thank my friend Paris and all of you for inviting me to speak here. It's an privilege to do that in Narcotics Anonymous meeting. So my clean date is June 19th, 1981 BC. That's usually. That's before crack, wasn't it, dinosaur? I always tell people, I was a punk growing up. I was a punk there on the streets, and I didn't spend a lot of time on the street, except in my mind and in my life. I always felt less than anything. But when I was on the street, what happens on the street is that you become like the street. And if you want to live, you become the animal that the street makes you, which is a place of survival. I don't know where I'll go today. I never know where God wants me to go with this. All I know is that somehow or other, people say, I'm looking forward to hearing you speak. And I say, I'm looking forward to hearing you speak too. Because God has a way of saying what God wants to say through me rather than Bruce trying to say it. If I say what I want to say, I'll get confused, just like I do with my life. So it's much better for me to ask God to lead my words and guide me to what He wants me to say today. A lot of things went on in my mind because I know this theme is on service. I don't know how you say it. I don't know the word in Danish other than tak. That's about it. But the most important thing for me has always been in recovery service. I got clean in 1981, like I said. My clean date is an arbitrary date because I was in the hospital before that date. I was getting off of methadone, and my fever, I don't know what it is, what is it, centigrade?
So what?
Celsius.
Yeah.
But my Fahrenheit was 106.7 when I got to the hospital.
That's hot.
And I'll go into that later. But by the grace of God, I'm here. By the grace of God, I stay here. All I do is make a decision one day at a time to just stay clean and make it through whatever happens each day. So a lot of things have happened in my life, and I tell those stories every once in a while. I'm going to tell one that's different than normal, because this is about where I think we are and who I am. And it's a story of angels. And a baby is being born. The baby, before it comes out, is like a little angel. And they say, okay, you're going to come out in the world now. You don't know what it's like out there, but just remember one thing. And the little angel says, don't worry, I'll remember. I am God. I am divine. I'll remember all that. He said, just remember that one thing. And he goes through the birth canal. Lights hit him, there's a whack on the ass, and he goes, whoever she goes, who am I? Where am I? What am I doing here? And those 3 questions are the questions we always ask all our lives. Those same questions are there. Who am I? What am I? What am I doing here? Wonderful thing about recovery as Narcotics Anonymous is that God gives us the answer to that if we stick around. But a lot of things happen in the meantime. So that process of searching, I believe that every one of us here is a spiritual seeker who just took a wrong turn in their lives. That's how I heard it once. And today I don't think it was a wrong turn in our lives. I think it was a turn that made me find the God of my understanding. I believe that God got me to Narcotics Anonymous. I didn't one day say to myself, I think I'll find a program of recovery because I really need it. I'm not that brilliant. I'm really not that brilliant a guy. I'm a stupid guy. And sometimes I think it's a good idea to stay stupid. Because if I stay stupid, I'm a teachable guy. And if I don't remain teachable, what happens is eventually I know it all. And when I know it all, I don't need you. But the truth of it is, I need you every day. And I'll continue to need you all my life. Now, wherever that goes. So I came here on a long trip. I call myself the Wandering Jew because I'm Jewish and I move a lot around. It's a nice way to look at myself. I have a lot of different things that I've been called in my life. But that's an affectionate way of describing me. A lot of people like to hear it, so I use it. But when I was growing up, my mother would always tell stories about me when I was a child. And one of them, she said, one day she was upset in the kitchen. And one of my aunties came out and said, Claire, what's the matter? She goes, it's Brucey. What's the matter with Brucey? He goes, he's making everything so difficult for me all the time. They said, don't worry about it. We'll talk to him. And they come out and they say, Brucey, why do you make life so difficult for your mother? My mother said my answer that she heard was, I don't make things difficult. I make them impossible. So I was an impossible, rebellious kid all my life. And, I had that big question, the question that every kid asks all the time. Why? And my mother would say, because of your mother, or something like that. And I'd ask him why. And I would just constantly get her upset. And we were always at odds with each other all the time in my life. She would say things to me like, why can't you be as good as your sister? Why can't you? You're smarter than you appear. Why don't you hang around out with people who are more your caliber? He doesn't know the word caliber. I knew what she meant, but to me it was saying, you're not doing things right. So everything I did in my life was wrong in my mind. No matter what I said, it was always wrong. No matter what I did, it was wrong. No matter how I excelled, it wasn't enough. It was always compared to somebody else. And what happened to me is that my life has been filled with comparing me to other people. And we have a saying here, identify, don't compare. I never heard that growing up. My mother didn't say, why don't you identify more with your sister? Why don't you identify more with your religion? Why don't you identify with this? She said, why can't you be as good as? And many people have heard me say that because one of the dilemmas, not just for me, but for many people here, is we're never feeling good enough. So my mind always told me I'll never amount to anything because that's what I was told. But where did I learn that? I didn't learn it because I said to myself, as a 2-year-old kid, you're not good enough. You'll never amount to anything. For a bum, you'll always be a bum. I never said that to myself. Somebody said that to me. And most of the time it was my mother saying that. And my mother didn't mean harm by anything she said. That's what I learned later on. As much as I hated hearing good stuff, as much as I wanted to hear good things about me, as much as I wanted to do everything so people would be proud of me, I kept hearing the same dialogue. It's not good enough. So I went through my life that way. I went through my life with this big nose. I used to think it was my grandmother. When she died, she left me this bump. I thought it was my grandmother's curse to me. You know? So when I was a kid, and I tell this stuff all the time because it's part of me. I was told when I was a kid that I had a big nose, so people called me elephant nose, called me schnozola, called me other things. And it was, again, I was ugly. So I wasn't good enough again. I wasn't good enough later on to have girlfriends because I was funny looking. I stood wrong. Everything I did was wrong. So I just didn't fit in. To be wrong, that means you don't fit in anywhere too. So I made myself a chameleon. So whether you were black, whether you were white, whether you were Chinese, wherever you were, I fit in now. I made myself fit in. I made myself fit in when my mother would tell me, you have to watch out for people because there's a lot of people who don't like Jewish people. And that made me feel less. That made me feel like I didn't fit in again. So I made sure that I fit in with all the people who hated Jews. I fit in with everybody. It didn't matter. What mattered to me was that I would do whatever it took to fit into your world. So where was my world? My world was filled with lies and deceit and misconceptions of everything going on in my world. I found that I fit in better with other people who were older than me because they didn't know me so well. And I learned how to play guitar, and I learned how to play bass guitar, and I played very well. And I got involved with some guys, and they smoked pot, and I didn't, but I did. You know, and I fit in again. And everybody thought I was cool once I did that. And then when people didn't know how to smoke pot, they would ask me how to smoke pot. And they asked me how to get drugs and all that other stuff. And I remember being on the beach one time in Reading, New Jersey. We call the beach the shore in Jersey. And my friend said, we need to get a nickel bag. Now, I was a slick and cool guy, you know, because I smoked pot with all the guys, I played guitar. And they said, we need you to get it for us. So I met this guy on the boardwalk. And he said, what do you want? He said, I want a nickel bag. I'm a hipster and cool guy. I want a nickel bag. And he goes, no problem. And I say, by the way, how much is a nickel bag? I had no idea how much a nickel bag was. I never counted anything myself. I just said, my pot from other people who got it, and I smoked it with them. But we ended up with a lot of seeds and a lot of headaches, and thinking that were pretty cool. So, you know, these are stupid things I did in my life. I did a lot of stupid things. And I remember later on, my mother, I was about 15 years old, and my mother said she was upset with me. My hair was long, and in 1966, you had long hair in school. You weren't allowed in school where I was. And my mother said, your hair is filthy. I'm going to wash it. And she pulled my hair down onto the sink. And the floor was wet from the water, and she slipped. And I went to catch her, and she fell, and she started screaming to my father. And he's trying to hit me. And she said after that, either you're crazy or I'm crazy, and we're going to a psychiatrist. So we went to the psychiatrist whose daughter I was friends with. And he said that my powers of reasoning at that age were slowly diminishing. And I thought he was full of shit because he was just upset that I didn't tell him I smoked pot. I was hanging out with his daughter. Because my thinking was wrong. My thinking was all screwed up. And I remember my mother, you know, so I just thought he was full of shit and I didn't take it any heart. It wasn't until later in my life I said, it's my mother. I must have been about 35 years old. I said, Mom, you know, Dr. Gans has said my powers of rational thought were gone. I think he was right. And she just smiled and said, it took you that long to figure that out. You know, by that time, my mother and I was in recovery for quite a while. And my mother and I had healed all wounds. And it's an amazing thing what happens in recovery with any relationship if we're willing to open our hearts and our minds and understand that there's no reason to fight with people. There's no reason not to love the people who loved you. And what I understood was that my mother, as much as she said all these things to me that were so negative in my mind, she wanted the very best for me. What she was trying to do in her way, because that's how she learned it, was to push me. And push me and push me and push me to become better. But even the idea of becoming better was still that same idea of not being good enough. So no matter how much my mother loved me and tried to do the best she could, her best wasn't good enough for me. I found power in drugs. No, I didn't get as bad as it did later on. It took a long time for me to finally hit a bottom. But, you know, I took drugs from the time I don't know anymore. I'm old, so I forget things. But what matters to me is that recovery changed my life. Now, I can go over all kinds of scenarios about what happened when I was using. But what matters is how am I today? I came here on a long journey from Nepal to Philippines to Thailand, back to Philippines to Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, back again into here. And I'm a little weak, I'm a little afraid, and my voice is pretty froggy. But one thing I thought to myself before I came was, I don't know if I can come. I better call Per and tell him I can't make it, I'm too weak. But that's my disease that always wants to tell me you can't do something. The same thing that I heard as a kid, my mind still tells me. It still wants to defeat me every which way it can. It's very subtle, it's very tricky, it's very powerful, very cunning, and this disease is also very patient. And it doesn't care if I have 35 years this month. What it cares about is that there's a time in my life where I will lose some kind of spiritual sense. And at that point, that disease can grab me as much as everybody else. Because the disease to me is as eternal as my God. And has as much power as God. The thing that affects that is that God has many more people, many more voices for me to hear, even in the committees in my head. It's all of you guys. All around the world, I can find help. No matter where I am, I never have to feel alone. And I don't. That's not true. I do feel alone sometimes. Sometimes I feel terribly alone. And it's okay to feel alone. As long as I know that I don't listen to the disease in my mind, it tells me, you are alone. I mean, you're like really alone. You are so alone. Nobody likes you anymore. Nobody wants to hear what you have to say. You don't have anything worthwhile to say. What are you doing standing up in a room of 100 people? You know you're full of shit. The only thing I can say was, well, thanks a lot. Thanks for sharing. Keep coming back. Because my disease will always be a newcomer. You ever hear somebody say, well, I'm out there doing my thing, recovery, my disease is inside of me, doing push-ups all the time. My disease doesn't need to do push-ups. It's got just enough power just as it is. It doesn't need to work out. I'm the one that needs to work out, you know. I look at myself today. I had a stroke 2 years ago. I walk like a snail. I told somebody today, every time I say I walk like an escargot, I think of the song, I walk like an Egyptian. Because I'm very slow. And my disease says, look at you, you're walking like an escargot. Nobody wants to walk with you, you're too slow. You're such a burden on everybody because you're walking so slow. Nobody can have a good time. Look at you, ruining everybody's life around you. You shouldn't go anywhere anymore. Stay in your house and watch TV and don't worry about things anymore because I'm with you. I know what you can do. And again, they're going to say, thanks for sharing. Keep doing that. Because it's so full of shit, it's amazing. I have a wonderful speaker friend. He's a rebel in his own cause and in his own mind. And he used to ask his disease, every time we talked to him, he'd say, well, what is your source of information? And he would shut his disease right up because it has no valid source of information. It's just a ton of bullshit going on all the time. So, I've got the same committees that everybody else has. I don't have more or less than. We all have the same ones. You have the Doom and Gloom Committee, you have the Hope Committee, and everything in between. You have the Relationship Committee, and that's a big one. It's a real big one. Probably half the room can be sitting around here right now thinking about a relationship. Thinking about what's going on, what can I do? What can I do better? Why didn't I do that? Why didn't I do that? Why didn't I do that? And then all of it still comes down to this disease always wanting to trip me up one way or the other, make me dissatisfied when I'm satisfied. Well, I have a description of disease called narcobabble, where it knows how to use the disease knows how to use the words of recovery against me. So, in 1981, when I got out of treatment, I'm down on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. I'm one of those most likely to see recovery guys, covering the community. I still thought at that time I had no problem with alcohol. My problem was dope and coke. I had a dream that I'd live in Jamaica, drinking pina coladas, living a happy life. In treatment, my counselor said, just before I left, do you think you can still drink? And I said, yeah, I can. She goes, well, don't tell anybody here. But then she said to me, I want you to go back into your cabin because I was in a place 7.5 acres in the woods in the middle of nowhere. 1981, I found a treatment center that had addicts who were therapists, counselors. And she said, I want you to go back in your cabin. I want you to write how many times you drank, how much it cost you, all this other stuff. And we'll talk tomorrow. Okay. So I went back in my room and I fell asleep and I didn't write a damn thing. And she asked me the next day, well, how did it go? I said, I gotta tell you honestly, I didn't write a thing. But I figured something out. It was very simple and it was very true. If I have a problem giving it up, then I must have a problem with it. And as a result of that, and of the result of you being able to listen, I never picked up in all this time. I have one white chip. Like my white chip, I didn't pick, was white chip back when I got clean. I didn't pick one up. I picked up the white key tag when I had 16 years clean. I never picked up a white key tag. No. I don't know why, I just never did. Picked up all the other ones, but never picked up that one. And I picked it up at 16 years old, at 16 years clean, because I needed to remind myself that I'm always a newcomer, and I always only have one day at a time. No matter how much time you have in this program, the disease will look at you and go, don't make me laugh. I got you by the proverbial just when I want to. And it'll wait, and wait. So even at 35 years clean, almost, and I don't project beyond that, it's still the same disease. It still can whack me as much as anybody else. And I never forget that. My sponsor used to say, if you go into a meeting, act as the newcomer every time, and ask yourself in that moment of silence for God to teach you something new, your mind will be open to anybody who has anything to say, even the person that you heard the same thing over and over and over again. Because I had a problem with that. And during that discussion, my sponsors, I said, this guy's saying the same thing over and over again. I think he's just so full of shit, he doesn't do anything different. And my sponsor said, I want you to know something. Now, I don't know about anybody else, but if your sponsor says you want you to know something, and you say, what? You're going to get quite an answer. So I said, what? He said, I want you to know that you're stupid and you don't know nothing and you reek of arrogance. And I had to think about that. And what I realized with that person who I hear the same thing over and over and over again, I hear it over and over again because I go to the same meetings he does. And he says it, and it's old for me. But the person who just walked in the room, who hears that stuff, has a great message. So I'm not one to judge anymore about somebody who repeats the same thing. I repeat myself too. So if somebody hears me speaking and say, oh, I heard that before, it's just me because it's part of my story. You know, my story is one of a lot of things that happened. When I was playing bass, I played in a band and I was a great player. My group almost became the Monkees, but we were in college or we were in high school. We couldn't outdraft it, so they passed on us. So, but I remember comparing myself to other people playing bass. And I remember thinking, I'm not as good as that guy. I was 17 years old. That guy was 22. He had a lot more experience than me. But my little mind only sees comparisons. Compare. Rather than, and I remember sharing it last time I was here, that one of the revelations I find is that if somebody knows something better than you that does the same thing as you, never, I should not say never, it's a bad word, but the best thing to do is embrace that person as somebody you can learn from. And say, teach me what you know, because I don't know that. Rather than say, I'll never be that good, which is what I've always been told, I'll never be that good. But one of the dreams that I had growing up was to become a record producer. And in my high school yearbook, that's what it says, future record producer. And I went on to become a recording engineer, and I was great at what I did. But as a result of this disease, I lost that career. I was in major studios, major people playing with me, and as a result of this disease, I lost that career. I look at this disease and I look at it as the word dream catcher? The dream catcher is catching. Well, what our disease is, for me, is a dream snatcher. No matter what your dream is, if you're in addiction, you can't fulfill that dream. Because the most important thing that happened in my life when I was using was that I had to keep using. I would leave work to go use, and I would come back many times. But when I was a recording engineer, I really didn't get high when I was working. I was sharing with somebody to say I did that once, and I never do it again. Because I kept recording the same thing over and over again, thinking I didn't record it. But I had the switches in the wrong place. And I'm so high, I didn't realize that. So I never used it again when I recorded. But I got it and I used, and I lost that career. So in 1981, when I lost that career, my idea was, well, now what are you going to do? Well, you're a junkie, go out and do what junkies do. So what I did was, it was matinee time in New York City. And in New York City, there's a lot of ladies who go to these two versions of Broadway, and I found 3 of them walking down 6th Avenue. And I grabbed one's purse, one of the ladies' purses, and I started running. And I don't know that it was like the only good Samaritan in New York City started chasing me down. They grappled with me, and I go to Percy's, I go me, and I ran into the subway. And I felt like a rat going back into its hole. I grew up one of these guys because I didn't fit in, because I wanted girls in my life. I became a liaison for everybody. I became a nice, wise, understanding man at 15 years old. And I stayed that way. And I gave up girls who liked me because my friends liked them. And I thought, I can't do that to my friend. But it didn't matter that I liked the same girl. It just mattered that my friend liked them, and I had to give that up. Because I had to keep my friends. And if I didn't do that, I'd lose my friend. So, all the things I did just to fit in and be loved, however that was, and be respected. But as a result of this disease, that nice, wise, kind, understanding person that I had been disappeared. And I remember looking at myself in the mirror one day when I was losing, and I asked myself that question: what happened to that nice, kind, trustworthy person that you were? And I just broke into tears because I could not find him. He was gone like the wind, and he was nowhere to be found. My body is multiple because this is a physical, mental, emotional disease. I don't think a lot of things we say and we don't really realize what we're saying. But I don't think I have a spiritual disease. Because I have a spirit inside me, and that spirit is whole. The only one who thinks it's not whole is up here. It's the mind that tells me you're not good enough. It's the mind that tells me you're separate from God. It's the mind that tells me God doesn't love you. You're going to be punished for all the things you did. It's my mind that tells me that. My mind tells me you'll never be awake. You'll never have a relationship with God. You'll never have a healthy relationship in your life. You're a loser. But then I ask myself today, has God ever told you you're a loser? Has God ever told you you'll never have a healthy relationship? Has God ever told you you're not worthy of anything? Has God ever told you you're not capable of anything? Little Brucey said no. Little Brucey said, oh, my God loves me. My God has always loved me. I saw somebody say it's the one relationship where you'll never lose your partner. Yeah. It's the only relationship where I don't have to have fear of abandonment. Because I have a God that's never left me. I had a friend of mine died of AIDS, and his minister talked about the word sin. And he said, sin comes from a Greek term, sinus. It's an archery term. It means missing the mark. And he believed that the only missing the mark that human beings have, the only sin they really have, is when they believe they're separate from God. So when Narcotics Anonymous taught me, I always say, God got me to Narcotics Anonymous, but Narcotics Anonymous led me to God of my understanding. I never fooled myself to think that Narcotics Anonymous existed before God. That my God had created Narcotics Anonymous just for me. Just for you, just for you, just for you. And every one of us has a different God, and it doesn't matter. Because all of us have one thing in common, and it's just recovery. And this recovery is a part of the journey. I tell people, if you relapse, it's not really a relapse. It's just that you're working on your first step. Why judge people who are struggling? This is a spiritual journey I'm on. Spiritual journeys take wrong turns all the time. It's like if you smell roses and you love the smell of roses, you forget there's thorns on a rose bush. So you get pricked by a rose. Suddenly, my God, I've been pricked by a rose. I can't touch a rose anymore. I can't smell it anymore because I'll get pricked again. Or you just enjoy the fragrance of it and know that if I hold it a certain way, I won't get pricked. So everything in life is about learning for me how to do things in a way where I don't have to be hurt. I've been hurt because I put myself in positions to be hurt. I got AIDS in 19, I was six years old when I was diagnosed with HIV. That was in 1987. In 1987, in this fellowship, as you talked about having HIV, you did each hear one person say, "That's not about recovery, it's an outside issue." That's a diseased thought. It's an outside issue. That doesn't have anything to do with the fact you might get high over the fact that you're HIV and you might die. Well, that's an outside issue you shouldn't talk about. We have to talk about everything that affects our being. And that's what I learned. And, I spent a lot of time not telling my family I was HIV, 7 years, because I didn't want my mother, again, to think that every time I had a cough, or every time I had a problem in my life, I was going to use again. Or if I got sick, it meant that I was going to get sicker. And all the drama that goes with that. And I thought that I'd outlive them, which I have. But, as a result of me being anemic and now malnourished, eventually my brother came to my house and I picked it up and he said, "What's going on with you?" And I told him not to tell his wife because his wife was very self-willed, and we decided it was important that I tell my family, and I wasn't ready. And it took me about 4 more months with my girlfriend saying, "Your mother is asking you all the time, do you have AIDS?" And I finally said, "We're going to go and tell him." And my father had Alzheimer's at the time. And I remember trying to tell my father. And I said to him, "Do you understand what's happening with your son?" He goes, "Yeah, I only understand that my son has an illness and it's serious." And then I wanted to explain more, and I realized, what am I going to explain more for? He's in a whole different area than I am in my life. I don't need to explain things to him to get him upset at anything. As a result of that, a lot of things that happened where I got really very sick, and my family didn't know the kind of things that I did to live with the virus. Yeah, I say, so I'm living 35 years with HIV, and I say living with rather than fighting against, because if you fight something, you create more problems in your life. And if I can learn how to love me no matter what's going on with me, it's a lot better. I've learned a lot of lessons over the fact that I'm HIV. I've helped a lot more people who are afraid of talking about HIV. By being HIV and being open about it. And knowing that the final solution is always, the thing that will kill you is not HIV or cancer or any of that other stuff. It's our attitudes towards it. Our fear that happens as a result of it. And I've had shingles twice, which you're only supposed to have it once. I remember the first time I had it, I go, "Oh my God, it's my first opportunistic infection. Now." Well, that's a disease using that against me. Because the bottom line is, shingles is a recurrence of childhood chickenpox. And it happens from stress, and I was in a stressful job. And that's why it happened. And I had to remind myself, this is just stress. It's just stress. It's not because you're going to die. We're all going to die anyway. It's not about the fact that we're going to die. It's about how we're going to live that matters.
That's
most
true.
people are looking for people. I remember my therapist said, you need to carry a message and help people like that. And I really didn't do that. I just carry a message of recovery. I carry a message of hope for people who need hope. You know, like the same speaker who talked about what's your source of information, he also used to introduce himself and say, I'm here to make the uncomfortable comfortable and make the comfortable uncomfortable. There's something in the Live and Clean book I read today about complacency. Resting on our morals and thinking we've got this shit together. I remember when I was in treatment, I had a wonderful, I even named that my therapist, my counselor told me, because I had a persona for a long time in my life. He called me, my last name was Gerstein, which he gave before. But he would call me Swami Leibowitz. You know, that's how he called me, Swami. You know. But he also said something else. He said, if you think you have your shit together, try nailing Jello against the wall. I don't know if you know what Jello is here. Gelatin. You know? So my mind, in 1981, when they said that, said, I can do that. You just have to hit it a certain way, you know. Make sure the gelatin is hard enough it'll stay on the wall. All kinds of crazy stuff my head went through. I still go through a lot of crazy scenarios in my life. But, you know, the bottom line is that I look around this room and I see a lot of smiles. I see some people looking seriously, some people smiling, some people nodding their heads, some people nodding out. Then they try not out in meetings, and I remember my sponsor said, you know, you take pills because you have to take pills, but you take them in the meeting and then you nod out. And people can think that you're taking drugs. So don't take them at the meeting. Makes sense. I don't know why I took them. They were nutritionists I was taking. But he said, just don't take things in the meeting. Take them on your own time, not in a meeting. You know? So little things that I learned to be aware of. He also said when a speaker is speaking, if you don't like the speaker, unless you have to pee bad, don't even get up for a cup of coffee. Pay attention to the speaker. I guess you guys like not drinking coffee. But anyway, you know, bottom line is, I don't know how much time we got. I'm okay. I am okay.
Oh, yeah.
I've always been okay.
That's it.
You know, I don't know most of you here, and some of you I know by sight and not by name, but I think what's most important for me is that I know your hearts, and that I'm welcome where I am, and you're welcome in my heart. Somebody came up to me yesterday and said, you remember me? I said, yes, I remember your face. She goes, I remember you from Malmo, and you came up to me, I was at registration, and you put your hand out and you said, my name is Bruce. And it was so sweet. Because all we have to do here is say hello to each other. You know, I have a belief that no matter who comes in these rooms, we should always welcome them. And to me, welcome is a spiritual principle. I grew up in fellowship when people came in the room and said sober. We would say, we don't use that fucking word here. And my sponsor came up to me. He was a guy who was in AA, 1981, he had 8 years clean. He was a speed freak also. And he felt that people with AA should help a new fellowship grow and develop. Not to influence them, but to help them grow and learn about things like traditions. And he was a very big part of our recovery in Orlando in 1981 for a number of years. But he said to me, do you know all the definitions for sobriety? I said, no. I looked at the dictionary and looked it up. And so I saw somber thought, abstinence from alcohol. He goes, there's one you missed. And I said, what? He goes, it also means emotional balance. And I thought about it, and I said, I don't think anybody in recovery has an emotional balance. That's why we're clean and not sober. We don't have emotional balance. I'm joking about that. You know, what matters is that I had to realize that it wasn't good to ostracize anybody because of how they express themselves. If you're a huffer, a smoker, a shooter, it doesn't matter. What matters is you have a desire to stop using and you want to find a way out. Mm-hmm. Where we are is a way in, and a way inside ourselves. As we always say here, this is an inside job. Recovery is an inside job. It's not about the relationship I get from outside with a woman, or with a dog, or with a car, or with my shoes, or anything else, because I've had all those. I was talking to my friend earlier today, that in Hindi, the word addiction is defined as attachment. So when we look at the 12th step, and it talks about having had a spiritual awakening as we go through these steps, we try to carry this message to addicts and practice these principles in all our affairs. An addict is anybody with an attachment. That means everybody in the world needs to be carried a message of hope to. Not just the people in these rooms. How many people you know in your daily lives that trudge along every day complaining about what's going on? The difference is they don't get high. But they still have attachments to things. Their work, their career, everything. So all of that comes down to addiction. So when I look at the 12th step, what I've come to realize is that everyone in this world is anonymous, and all of us are one. So no matter what I have to say, we're all the same here. And if I can do that, I can welcome somebody who stinks, somebody who wears shit clothing, somebody who has bad teeth, bad breath, or anything else that you can think of into the room, because they need help as much as me.
Yes.
And every day I need your help. When I got clean, we also had another expression, was that God does not make junk. God don't make junk, that's how we said it. And I haven't heard that in a long time. But I think it's beyond God don't make junk. My God is perfect. My God is perfect in every way. And I don't think perfect can make anything other than perfect. So I am perfectly Bruce. No matter how I act, no matter how I react to things, I am doing perfectly what Bruce needs to do that day. So I'll tell you a little story about my teacher, or called the guru, because it's how in Judaism is rabbi, and Hindu is guru, master, whatever you want to call them. But he used to love to make pancakes. And he would go into the kitchen with everybody, and he would make pancakes. And one would come out round like a pancake, and he'd go perfect. He'd laugh, and he'd go on and make another one. And the next one would come out, and it'd be a little less brown. And again he'd laugh, and he'd go perfect. And no matter how they came out, he said, perfect. So what makes me think that God doesn't do the same with us? Somebody here is heavy, somebody here is thin, somebody here is tall, somebody here is short, somebody here is less white, somebody is more white, somebody is red, somebody is everything. As my teacher would say, no matter how you slice it and dice it, each one of you is perfect. Each one of us is perfect. The hardest thing for us is to not believe what we were told to begin with. I don't know if you're Christian, Catholic, Jewish, Lutheran, Hindu, whatever. Somebody says, especially in Christianity, only one being was ever perfect. And you know who they would say that is. But even that being said, he's your brother. And if he's your brother and he's perfect, guess what? You're perfect too. And that's the bottom line. But we were told we'll never amount to that. We'll never amount to being perfect. Even in our literature it says we're not perfect. Who told you you're not perfect? Human beings told you you're not perfect. If you ask your God, am I perfect? I can guarantee you God will tell you however God needs to say it. You're a perfect being, you're my child, and you're loved. Just bottom line, you're loved. I'm loved. I'm a perfect child of my God. My God has gotten me here to 8th dimension, to everything else. And I always tell people, if you don't believe that your God has the power to heal you of all things, it doesn't mean you can stop going to recovery, because it's part of the healing process. But if you don't believe that your God can heal you of all things, if you have the faith for God to do that, you've sold your God short. You've limited the ability of God to be as powerful as God is. I believe my God has all power. I believe my God has me standing here even when I'm not supposed to be standing. I believe even though my tongue's bit off and I'm slurring, my God somehow or other has the ability to make me clear. I thank God for all that stuff. I thank God for what he does for me. So I'll tell you one other story. It's not even a story, but you ever see a guy or a girl come in, they're really gruff, they're angry, maybe they look like bikers, carry knives, got all the jewelry stuff on them, and there's another thing about bikers and stuff and commitments, tattoos and all that, and girl asks them, I really want to commit, and they're all tattooed, and they go, I'm sorry, I have a problem with commitments. But you see a guy come in and really hard and they're really tough and you're afraid of even touching them. But in the bottom line, I like marshmallows. And I like to roast marshmallows. You roast a marshmallow. And no matter what you do, you can't just keep it perfectly brown. It catches fire. It goes all crusty and disgusting looking. Well, that's how these people come in. Crusty and disgusting looking. You don't want to touch them. But if you take that crusty, disgusting, blackened marshmallow and you bite into it, it is the sweetest, softest thing that you can ever taste.
That's it.
So I think that all of us come in here as crusty, disgusting, blackened marshmallows. But when we go inside and we taste ourselves, we are the sweetest human beings in the world. That's a wonderful thing to be. Wonderful to be a soft, squishy marshmallow that tastes good and is sweet. So anyway, I want to thank you all for being here today to me, because whether you know it or not, even though I'm the one speaking, it's God who speaks through me. And if you heard something, you heard it because God wanted you to hear it. If you didn't hear anything today, it's because you're not ready yet to hear something. Well,
That's it.
the bottom line is I love you all very much. And I wanted to thank you because you did tremendous work on me today. Because I remind myself of things that I have to be reminded of. Because disease will still say to me, we're tired of hearing you. You've said enough. Shut up, you motherfucker. You have lacked humility. As an archibald, you lacked humility. Well, I'm proud to be a child of God. I'm proud to be a recovering addict in 35 almost years clean.
That's it.
I'm proud to be standing in front of you and carrying the message of hope. I'm proud to have him laugh. I'm proud to know that my God speaks through me in the way that God does. And if you've got something here from this voice today, that's God for you. You know, we always say that God speaks through people. And we are his best element, and his best way for us to communicate with each other. So, I'm getting weak, and I'm getting a nod that it's time to shut up. Not really. But what I want to say to you is all is that no matter what goes on in your life today, no matter what goes on in my life today, today is the only day I have. And today is a beautiful day. Yeah. And if you have fear today, I want you to think about this. The fear is not about bucking everything and running or any of that stuff. It's just forgetting that everything is all right. That everything is all right. When we forget that, we forget that God gives us this ability to stay clean one day at a time and grab each other to recover one day at a time. That's all I have. That's all I've ever had. That's all I ever will have. So it's a beautiful day.
It is.
As long as I have my mind set in a beautiful way. So I insist on having it set in a beautiful way. And I thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you very
much. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Please help us improve our ranking so others can find us by putting a review on Stitcher, iTunes, or your favorite podcast index. NAPOD is ad-free thanks to the folks supporting the show with $1 more per month. If you enjoy listening, you can join them by going to napod.xyz and looking for the donate link. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.